Commander Vex 9 pressed his 6 fingers against his temple ridges, watching the surveillance feed with growing disbelief. The human cadet, Maya Torres, was currently doing something that defied every military protocol in the Galactic Defense Academy's 300-year history. She was laughing while dragging a 2-ton training mech across the obstacle course with her bare hands. "Sir," Communications Officer Rital clicked nervously, her antenna twitching. "Perhaps we should recalibrate the gravity simulators. There must be an error." Vex 9's mandibles clicked in frustration. "Officer Rital, I've run diagnostics 12 times. The gravity is set to standard Academy levels, 3 times Earth normal." The truth was becoming increasingly uncomfortable for the Galactic Defense Academy's most prestigious training facility. After 2 centuries of producing the galaxy's finest warriors from species across 47 star systems, they had encountered their first Deathworlder recruit, and she was making their carefully designed torture chambers look like a children's playground. Maya Torres wiped sweat from her forehead and grinned at the towering obstacle ahead. The Ganchuan Death Maze, as the Academy instructors lovingly called it, had claimed more military careers than actual combat. 67 different species had attempted it over the decades. The current record holder was a Thrakan warrior who had completed it in 43 minutes and 17 seconds before collapsing into a 3-day coma. Maya was currently 12 minutes in, and she was treating it like a morning jog with occasional comedy breaks. "Hey, Instructor Kale 7, she called out cheerfully to the floating observation platform. "Is this thing supposed to be moving? Because I think your hydraulics are broken." Instructor Kale 7's purple exoskeleton darkened with embarrassment. The broken hydraulics were designed to simulate earthquake conditions while the recruit navigated a maze of laser grids, pressure traps, and gravitational anomalies. Most species required protective gear just to survive the environment. Maya was joking about mechanical failures. 3 months ago, when the first human had applied to the Academy, the admissions board had nearly rejected her application outright. Humans were from Earth, after all, a pleasant little garden world in the outer rim with moderate gravity, benign weather patterns, and absolutely nothing that would suggest its inhabitants could survive, let alone excel in actual combat conditions. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a plasma blade. Captain Yorfin of the Zetheri Commonwealth had been the most vocal opponent of human admission. His species came from a high-gravity world with acid rain and predators that could phase through solid matter. Soft worlders, he had declared with typical Zetheri arrogance, have no business in military service. They'll fold at the first sign of real pressure. Currently, Captain Jorfin was watching Maya Torres bench press what appeared to be a small building while maintaining a casual conversation with her workout partner, a massive Bruthan named Korg Rex who was struggling with half the weight. "So then I told my brother," Maya was saying between reps, her breathing barely elevated, "you can't just eat ghost peppers like candy and expect your stomach to thank you later." But did he listen? No. And guess who had to drive him to the hospital at 3 in the morning? Korg Rex, whose people were known throughout the galaxy for their incredible physical strength, was staring at Maya with something approaching religious awe. His thick arms were trembling with the effort of lifting 200 standard units while this impossible human was casually handling 500 like it was warm-up weight. "Maya Torres," Korg Rex wheezed. What do humans eat on your homeworld?" Maya laughed, the sound echoing through the training facility, and somehow making every other species present feel simultaneously comforted and terrified. "Oh, you know, the usual stuff. Pizza, tacos, Carolina Reaper peppers for fun. Battery acid." She paused at Korg Rex's horrified expression. "I'm kidding about the battery acid. We save that for special occasions." This was the human sense of humor that had been mystifying Academy psychologists for weeks. They made jokes about everything, especially things that should theoretically kill them. The cultural analysis team had compiled a list of human recreational activities that read like a catalog of elaborate suicide methods. They climbed mountains for fun. They jumped out of perfectly functional aircraft with nothing but fabric to slow their descent. They ate food so chemically aggressive it required warning labels. And somehow, these same creatures who treated mortal danger as weekend entertainment were now sitting in military classrooms, taking notes on advanced survival techniques that were apparently less challenging than their typical Thursday evening. Dr. Yara Nin, the Academy's chief xenobiologist, had spent weeks studying human physiology and psychology. Her findings had been unsettling. "Their bone density is off the charts," she reported to the faculty council. "Their muscle fiber composition suggests they evolved in a high-stress environment. But the truly disturbing part is their neural architecture. They seem to have evolved a positive response to adrenaline. They actually perform better under life-threatening stress. The Council of Instructors had sat in stunned silence as Dr. Yara Nin continued her report. In essence, colleagues, we have admitted a species that becomes more capable as situations become more dangerous. Our training methods, designed to break down recruits and rebuild them as soldiers, appear to be entertaining them. The evidence was everywhere if you knew where to look. During the psychological resilience assessment, most species showed predictable stress responses when presented with simulated combat scenarios. Heart rates elevated. Decision-making became impaired. Motor functions decreased under pressure. Maya Torres had literally asked if they had any harder settings and suggested background music to really get the adrenaline pumping. Her psychological profile made for fascinating if terrifying reading. Where other species showed fear responses to simulated death scenarios, humans showed curiosity. Where others displayed stress markers under pressure, humans exhibited what Dr. Yara Nin could only describe as competitive enthusiasm. The breaking point came during what the Academy called Hell Week, 7 days of continuous challenges designed to push recruits beyond their physical and mental limits. Sleep deprivation, extreme environmental conditions, complex tactical problems with no clear solutions, and combat simulations that had sent some of the galaxy's toughest species home in tears. Maya Torres had approached Hell Week with the same energy most species reserve for vacation planning. Day 1. Navigate a maze in complete darkness while avoiding motion sensors and pressure plates. Standard completion time 4 hours. Maya finished in 47 minutes and spent the extra time teaching other recruits her techniques. Day 2. Survive in a simulated Arctic environment with minimal equipment. Most recruits managed to build adequate shelter and maintain body temperature. Maya built what could only be described as a luxury cabin and spent the evening roasting improvised s'mores over her perfectly constructed fire. Day 3. Solve tactical problems under extreme sleep deprivation. This was where most recruits began to crack. Complex scenarios requiring split-second decisions while running on 2 hours of sleep in 72 hours. Maya not only solved every problem, but began creating alternate solutions just for fun. By day 5, the instructors were starting to panic. Maya Torres wasn't just surviving Hell Week, she was thriving. While other recruits stumbled through challenges in various states of exhaustion and stress, she maintained a cheerful commentary that somehow made everything sound like an exciting adventure. "This reminds me of summer camp," she had announced while rappelling down a cliff face in hurricane-force winds. Except Camp Wildwood didn't have the awesome special effects. The final challenge of Hell Week was the crown jewel of Academy training, a live-fire combat simulation against 10 seasoned instructors using full-contact training protocols. It was designed to demonstrate to recruits that they still had much to learn, that overconfidence could be fatal, and that real combat was nothing like the controlled training exercises they'd been practicing. The instructors chosen for the exercise were carefully selected from different species, each bringing unique combat advantages. Captain Jor Finn of the Zethari, with his natural phasing abilities, Sergeant Tox Var, from the acid swamp world of Melkor, whose natural toxins could incapacitate most species through skin contact, Commander Yex Rin of the Hive Mind Collective, who could process tactical information at superhuman speeds, and 7 others, each representing the pinnacle of their species' military prowess. The combat arena was configured for maximum realism. Urban environment, multiple levels, limited visibility, and enough environmental hazards to keep even experienced soldiers on edge. Standard rules applied non-lethal weapons, but full contact engagement. First side to achieve complete incapacitation of the other team won. The instructors entered the arena with the confidence of seasoned professionals about to deliver a harsh but necessary lesson to an overconfident recruit. They had done this hundreds of times with hundreds of different species. The formula was reliable. Young recruit meets overwhelming opposition, learns humility, emerges as a better soldier. Maya Torres entered the arena with a smile that somehow managed to be both friendly and absolutely terrifying. 10 against 1? She called out cheerfully, as the simulation began. "Aw, you guys are worried about me. That's so sweet." The first hint that this might not go according to plan came 30 seconds into the engagement. Sergeant Tox Var, attempting to use his natural camouflage to approach from behind, found himself hanging upside down from an improvised rope trap, wondering how a human had moved so quietly he hadn't heard her approach. "Sorry, Sergeant." Maya's voice echoed through the arena, But stealth mode works both ways. Captain Jorfin, confident in his phasing abilities, attempted to surprise her by materializing directly behind her position. He materialized directly into what turned out to be a perfectly timed elbow strike that sent him careening into a wall with enough force to activate the arena's safety systems. Phase shifting is so cool, Maya commented as she ziplined between buildings using what appeared to be shoelaces in pure audacity. But you have to remember to check for obstacles when you rematerialize. The remaining 8 instructors regrouped, their confidence beginning to waver. This was not going according to any manual they'd ever read. Commander Yexrin, with his hive mind processing power, attempted to coordinate a simultaneous 8-point attack that should have been impossible for any individual to counter. Maya Torres apparently had not read that particular tactical manual. She was everywhere and nowhere, moving through the urban environment like she had designed it herself. Environmental hazards that were supposed to limit movement became improvised weapons. Structural elements meant to provide cover became launching points for impossible acrobatic maneuvers. And through it all she maintained a running commentary that somehow made the wholesale dismantling of their tactical superiority sound like a nature documentary. Oh, looks like Instructor Zimpal is trying to flank left. That's a bold strategy. Let's see how it plays out. This as she somehow ricocheted off 3 different surfaces to land directly behind the flanking instructor, who found himself immobilized before he could process what had happened. And here we have the classic pincer movement from the north and south. Textbook coordination. She seemed to be in 2 places at once, somehow neutralizing both pincer arms simultaneously while commenting on their tactical choices like a sports announcer. By the 15-minute mark, 6 instructors were down. By 20 minutes, it was 8. The remaining 2 veteran warriors with decades of experience and natural abilities that bordered on supernatural found themselves backed into a corner by a cheerful human who seemed to be having the time of her life. You know, Maya said conversationally as she systematically dismantled their defensive position with a combination of physics, improvised engineering, and what could only be described as weaponized creativity. This is way more fun than the time I had to fight my way out of that haunted corn maze. The last 2 instructors looked at each other with the shared realization that they were about to become part of Academy legend for all the wrong reasons. 23 minutes and 47 seconds after the simulation began, Maya Torres stood alone in the arena, surrounded by 10 incapacitated instructors, and looking like she had just finished a pleasant morning workout. That was awesome, she announced to the observation deck where the Academy's senior staff stood in stunned silence. Can we go again? Maybe with environmental hazards this time? Commander Vex 9 slowly closed his eyes and began composing what was going to be a very difficult report to Galactic Command. Somehow, they had managed to recruit a species that treated their most advanced military training as recreational entertainment. The worst part was, he was starting to suspect that Maya Torres had been holding back. The emergency faculty meeting convened at 0400 hours, which told you everything you needed to know about how seriously Galactic Command was taking the Maya Torres situation. Dean Korvash, a distinguished Altarian, whose species had been running military academies since before humans discovered fire, all sat at the head of the conference table looking like someone had just informed him that physics had decided to take a vacation. Gentle beings, he began, his translator struggling with what appeared to be a stress-induced dialect shift. We have a problem. A big human-shaped problem that just rewrote every training manual we've ever published. Dr. Yaranine pulled up holographic displays of Maya's performance metrics, and the room fell into the kind of silence usually reserved for funeral services. Her reaction times are 30% faster than our equipment can accurately measure. Her situational awareness covers a 360-degree sphere, even in high-stress environments. And her problem-solving approach, she paused, searching for diplomatic phrasing. Let's just say she thinks outside the box because she appears to be unaware that boxes exist. Captain Jorfin, still nursing bruised ribs and wounded pride from the previous day's simulation, raised a tentacle weakly. Perhaps we should consider that Maya Torres is an exceptional individual. Surely not all humans possess such alarming capabilities. The uncomfortable shifting around the table suggested that everyone present had been harboring the same desperate hope. It was Commander Vex 9 who delivered the crushing blow to their collective optimism. I contacted Earth's military liaison yesterday, he announced with the enthusiasm of someone reading his own execution order. According to Colonel James Park of Earth Space Force, Maya Torres ranked 17th in her class at their basic training facility. He let that sink in for a moment. 17th, out of 200, in what they classified as a standard recruitment cycle. The silence that followed was so complete you could have heard a pin drop in the vacuum of space. Instructor Kale-7's exoskeleton began clicking nervously, a sure sign of impending panic among his species. You mean there are 16 humans who are better at this than her? Apparently so. And Colonel Park mentioned something about special operations candidates who undergo additional training that makes their basic program look like, and I quote, summer camp for toddlers. Dr. Yarinen's tentacles went completely limp.
Hall, we need to see her personnel file.
Her complete personnel file. There has to be something we missed. The holographic display shifted to Maya's application documents, and several faculty members immediately began questioning their life choices. Under previous military experience, Maya had listed, none unless you count paintball tournaments and that one time I got lost in Yellowstone for 3 days. Under special skills she had written, can parallel park on the first try, makes excellent tacos, knows all the words to Hamilton. Under hobbies and interests, the list was extensive. Rock climbing, skydiving, whitewater rafting, mixed martial arts, parkour, what appeared to be something called extreme ironing, and a note that she held her university's record for most consecutive hours spent playing something called Dark Souls without rage quitting. What? Asked Dean Corvash slowly. Is Dark Souls? The Academy's cultural research team had prepared for this question. Lieutenant Zcor, a vegan specialist in xenocultural studies, cleared her throat nervously. It's a recreational simulation program designed to test psychological resilience through repeated failure scenarios. Players attempt to overcome increasingly difficult challenges while the program systematically eliminates their progress. Most participants experience significant frustration and discontinue the experience within hours. And Maya Torres played this torture program, all for recreational purposes, for 73 consecutive hours. According to her application, yes, she noted that she found it relaxing and a good way to unwind after finals. The faculty exchanged glances that conveyed a shared realization they were dealing with a species that considered psychological torture a form of stress relief. Meanwhile, in the Academy's recreation facility, Maya Torres was having what she would later describe as the best conversation ever with a group of alien cadets who had initially approached her with the kind of cautious respect usually reserved for unexploded ordnance. Cadet Rix Tannar, a proud Catherian whose people were known throughout the galaxy for their intellectual superiority, had been struggling with advanced tactical theory. The math involved in three-dimensional combat scenarios with variable gravity fields was challenging even for his enhanced neural processing. It's like this, Maya was explaining while casually juggling what appeared to be several pieces of training equipment. You don't need to calculate every variable, you just need to feel the flow of the engagement. Rix Tannar's cranial ridges furrowed in confusion. Feel the flow? Maya Torres? Combat mathematics requires precise calculations. You cannot simply intuitive your way through gravitational mechanics. Maya grinned and tossed the equipment aside with impossible precision, each piece landing exactly where it belonged across the room. Watch this. She pulled up a holographic tactical scenario, one of the most complex three-dimensional problems in the Academy's database. Standard solution time for Catherians, 47 minutes, for most other species, several hours, if at all. Maya studied the display for approximately 15 seconds, then began moving holographic units with casual confidence. Okay, so the enemy fleet is using the asteroid field for cover, right? But look at the gravitational pull from that binary star system. If I position my forces here, here, and here, her hands move through the hologram, like she was conducting an orchestra. Then when they try to flank, the gravity well pulls them into a crossfire pattern they can't escape. The solution appeared on screen. Optimal result achieved in 2 minutes and 38 seconds. Rix Tannar stared at the display, then at Maya, then back at the display. His people had been studying tactical mathematics for millennia.
How did you?
The calculations alone should require. I don't calculate it, Maya said cheerfully. I just, see what wants to happen and help it along. This was not an isolated incident. Across the Academy, human intuition was systematically dismantling carefully structured educational approaches that had worked perfectly well for hundreds of species over centuries of academic excellence. In advanced engineering, Professor Cott Melvin had spent weeks explaining the fundamental principles of structural load distribution. It was precise work requiring careful mathematical analysis and deep understanding of materials science. Then Maya Torres had glanced at a bridge design problem and announced, "Oh, that's going to fall down when the wind hits it wrong," before sketching a modification that not only solved the problem but improved the design efficiency by 30%. When pressed to explain her reasoning, Maya had shrugged and said, "It just looked wobbly." Her wobbly assessment had required the Academy's engineering department 3 days of intensive analysis to fully understand and verify. In combat psychology, Dr. Rex Morinth had been delivering his famous lecture series on fear management and stress response optimization. His techniques had been refined over decades and had helped thousands of soldiers overcome the natural psychological barriers to effective combat performance. Maya Torres had listened politely for about 10 minutes before raising her hand. "Dr. Rex Morinth, why are we trying to manage fear? Wouldn't it be easier to just not be afraid?" Dr. Rex Morinth had patiently explained that fear was a fundamental survival instinct present in all sentient species, and that the goal was not to eliminate it but to channel it productively. Maya had nodded thoughtfully. "Okay, but what if you just decided not to be afraid? Like what if you looked at a scary situation and thought, 'Hey, this is going to be fun,' instead of, 'Oh no, I might die'?" The lecture hall had erupted in discussion as students from 47 different species tried to process the concept of voluntarily reframing mortal danger as recreational entertainment. Rex Morinth had spent the remainder of the session fielding questions about human psychological architecture that he was completely unprepared to answer. But it was in advanced combat applications where Maya Torres truly began to worry the faculty. The course was designed to simulate real battlefield conditions with the kind of unpredictable variables that separated Academy graduates from combat veterans. Multiple objectives, shifting priorities, incomplete information, and the ever-present possibility that your carefully planned strategy would collide with enemy action and explode into magnificent chaos. Maya Torres treated it like the world's most entertaining video game. "Okay, team," she announced, during a particularly complex simulation involving hostage rescue, enemy infiltration, and a ticking time bomb, because the Academy believed in preparing students for worst-case scenarios. "Here's what we're going to do. Vextor, you take your squad and create a distraction at the north entrance. Make it loud and obvious. Kira now, your team hits the ventilation system here and here. Rix Tanner, you're with me for the direct approach. Cadet Vextor, whose species was renowned for their methodical approach to tactical problems, tentacles writhing with confusion. Maya Torres, the direct approach leads through a heavily fortified corridor with overlapping fields of fire. It's suicide." Maya's grin was the kind that made seasoned instructors reach for emergency medical kits. "Only if you go through it normally. Who says we have to use the floor?" What followed was a masterclass in creative problem-solving that would have made human special forces operators weep tears of pride. Maya treated the heavily fortified corridor as a three-dimensional puzzle, using walls, ceilings, and the structural framework of the building itself as her highway system. While her teammates created their assigned diversions, Maya moved through the facility like she had blueprints memorized and gravity was more of a suggestion than a law. She bypassed the overlapping fields of fire by not being where the enemy expected anyone to be, which turned out to be everywhere except the floor. The hostage rescue was completed in record time. The enemy infiltration was neutralized before they could achieve their objectives, and the bomb was disarmed with 17 seconds to spare, though Maya's method involved something that the Academy's engineering department was still trying to categorize as either brilliant improvisation or impossible violation of several physical laws. "Time," announced Instructor Yelkaden, as the simulation ended. "Mission complete. All objectives achieved. 0 casualties." Maya dropped down from what appeared to be a ceiling-mounted position that shouldn't have been accessible without specialized equipment. "That was great. The part where I had to redirect the plasma conduits to create a feedback loop in their sensor array was particularly fun. Can we do another one?" Instructor Yelkaden looked at his mission timer, then at Maya, then at the timer again. "Cadet Torres, you just completed a scenario designed to take 4 hours and 37 minutes. Really? It felt longer. Oh well. Maybe the next one will be more challenging." That evening, the Academy's communication arrays hummed with encrypted traffic as reports flowed to Galactic Command, Earth's military liaison office, and several extremely classified research facilities that specialized in what was euphemistically called xenobiological anomaly assessment. The consensus emerging from these conversations was both simple and terrifying. Humans were not just another species joining the galactic community. They were a fundamental paradigm shift that no one had seen coming. Colonel James Park, military liaison, found himself fielding increasingly frantic communications from alien military commands across the galaxy. The questions were all variations on the same theme. How many more humans were like Maya Torres? What were Earth's military capabilities? And most importantly, were humans planning to use their apparent superhuman abilities for conquest? Colonel Park's responses were models of diplomatic restraint, though privately he was starting to understand why the aliens were worried. If Maya Torres was considered average by Earth standards, and if there were billions more humans with similar capabilities, then humanity had accidentally become the most formidable military force in known space simply by existing. The final incident that cemented Maya Torres's legend at the Academy came during the traditional graduation exercise known as the Gauntlet. It was designed as a comprehensive test of everything students had learned, combining academic knowledge, tactical thinking, physical capability, and psychological resilience into one final challenge that would determine whether they were ready for actual military service. The Gauntlet consisted of 7 sequential challenges, each designed to test different aspects of military competence. Students had 72 hours to complete all 7 challenges, with breaks allowed between sections. The average completion time was 48 hours. The Academy record, held by a legendary Altarian named Corvex, was 31 hours and 14 minutes. Maya Torres completed the entire Gauntlet in 8 hours and 23 minutes, including a lunch break where she taught several struggling classmates how to approach problems they'd been stuck on for days. More significantly, she had treated the entire exercise as an opportunity to experiment with creative solutions, turning each challenge into what she described as a really cool puzzle with awesome special effects. Her approach to the final challenge, a solo infiltration mission into a heavily defended facility, had required Academy officials to completely rewrite their assessment criteria. Maya had achieved mission success through a combination of techniques that included advanced psychological manipulation, creative engineering, improvised chemistry, and what could only be described as weaponized charm. She had talked her way past the first 3 security checkpoints by convincing the guards that she was part of a routine inspection team. She had disabled the facility's primary defense grid by reconfiguring it into an automated coffee brewing system. And she had extracted the target intelligence by befriending the facility commander and getting him to show off his collection of classified documents. The entire infiltration had been completed without a single hostile action, leaving the Academy's assessment team to grapple with the philosophical question of whether military objectives achieved through friendship and coffee counted as combat effectiveness. As Maya Torres stood before the Academy's graduation assembly, receiving commendations that had required the invention of new categories of military excellence, Commander Vex 9 reflected on the changes one human had brought to their carefully ordered institution. The Academy's training programs had been completely overhauled, combat psychology textbooks were being rewritten, and most significantly, admission standards were being reviewed in light of what they had learned about the gap between human normal and galactic impossible. Maya Torres, for her part, seemed completely unaware of the academic revolution she had caused. In her graduation speech, she thanked the Academy for the most fun I've had since that camping trip where everything went wrong, and mentioned that she was looking forward to seeing what actual military service is like. The assembled faculty exchanged glances that conveyed a shared, terrifying thought. If this was what human training looked like, what would human warfare be like? As Maya Torres departed the Academy with honors that would have made her professors weep if they had tear ducts, she left behind more than just a collection of shattered records and revised training protocols. She had fundamentally altered the galaxy's understanding of what was possible. The final entry in Commander Vex 9's official report to Galactic Command was both a warning and a prophecy. Recommend immediate reassessment of humanity's strategic classification. Current intelligence suggests that what we have observed represents baseline human capability, not exceptional performance. Request guidance on diplomatic protocols for species whose recreational activities include our most advanced military training. Maya Torres boarded her transport to her first duty assignment, completely unaware that she had just redefined galactic military science by being, in her own words, pretty normal for a human. Behind her, the Academy settled into the challenging task of figuring out how to train alien species to keep up with human normal. It was going to be a long, interesting century for military education across the galaxy. And somewhere in the personnel files, Maya Torres' final academy evaluation contained a note that would become legendary. Exceptional performance in all categories. Recommended for immediate field assignment. Note: do not assign to routine patrol duties. This cadet requires challenges that match her capabilities. The galaxy was about to find out what that meant.